Hey everybody, this is Dr. Ben Pearl with FitFoot U, and today I am here with a colleague, Bryan Kentner. How's Philly in the house doing today?
Philly, I mean, other than yesterday's game where we lost, but we have to let the Padres have won. Philly is doing wonderfully, though,
All
especially
right.
since we did not expect to be in postseason. All right, no
Yes.
more baseball.
Well, I don't know, Bryan, whether it's more appropriate to call you the spin doctor because we have spinning with the 3D TPU, but maybe more appropriately, the 3D print doctor because you are at the forefront of this technology. And what I wanted to do with this for both the people looking to potentially get involved with 3D print of orthotics is to highlight some of the advantages and then some of the things that require the expertise of somebody like you to sort of cipher through what are some of the better printers and how do we avoid some of the pitfalls of being an engineer on your printer.
Yeah, I mean, so when you're looking at 3D printing, there's a couple things a lot of the devices you'll see are made on professional units that require a large clean room that a doctor is not going to have in his office. That'd be something if you're looking at printing in a PA11, which is just basically a fancy name for the type of nylon that this is printed in. And this would be a device very similar to your standard polypropylene. However, in your standard office, that type of printer is not a reasonable purchase. So you're looking at a commercial FDM printer, or even you can use, I know a couple of people that have a hobby version of an FDM printer that they're using.
And spitting out something like what I have here.
Yeah.
And this is just one that I've done with another lab, and I've used your lab and one other lab. And this is nice because it has a relief point to lower the volume. Because as we know, many of the 3D printers are additive. So you'll get that stack height. And even though we're trying to get that appropriate stack at the sustentaculum tali, right there to be the optimum point for supporting the arch, some people simply can't tolerate that much. So it's things that we have to make modifications both in the individual assignment of the 3D image, and then sometimes we have to go as far as to change the protocol that is producing the 3D image, where we have a lower stack height, where the algorithm is to actually make it much lower than the actual contour of the foot.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing really is depending on the volume of the shoe. So one nice thing is to have a program that you can design each insole to fit inside the shoe. But I think what you're alluding to is like a 3D printed on an FDM print will have, it has the arch height, which will be there. Bring my camera this direction.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. But the arch height is going to be the same as the device, except for you have all this material underneath, because the way the FDM does is it prints from the bottom up. So instead of having a device where you have a lot of material to remove, we print it as one solid device. So it'd be more similar to an EVA type of CNC carving at your end result products. Now, depending upon, I haven't done this with my FDM so much to test materials, but FDM can print devices like this. This was done also on an FDM printer. The difference you'll see is at the bottom, there's going to be a little bit of overhang in areas where it prints in the air. So there's like a material that you print called supports that you can add up to here so it starts there. But the overall plastics here are not quite as resilient as the ones done on a multi-fusion jet or one of the big HP printers. So I really don't recommend that type. For the home printer, I recommend printing in TPU, which is a flexible material. And so that one you're building from the bottom up. Now you can add, like you had on that one, you can have little holes you add to it. The joy of 3D printing is you can pretty much change the settings and print whatever you want. And then if someone has an issue with a spot, instead of taking it back, grinding it, or doing any type of modification or sending it away, you just go in and redesign the CAD, and an hour later have a new one reprinted. And if you Yeah.
And I was just going to say, I have done situations where I will bevel out the underbelly, both for it not being as slippery, if I want to have a little more friction coefficient, and also just to lower or narrow the arch slightly by just using a sanding grinder. But to your point, optimally, it's nice when you can just have the print itself modified if it requires a more
Yeah, I enjoy.
modest modification, so that you then have a more professional looking thing and not one that's all beat up with the sanding grinder.
Well, and also the issue with when you do a sandy grinder, you're relying on the technician and the person having a sandy grinder, and you're relying on, a couple issues versus if I have a modification I make to the CAD, when I want to reprint that device, I can just hit reprint and it'll reprint it exactly. So that way for reprints, or if the patient wants extra pairs, you can make sure everyone is going to be exactly the same. Versus if you have someone hand grind something, between A and B is not going to be necessarily the same. And
Sure.
It's going to take time. You're going to be kicking up the dust of the materials. So you run into the health concerns that you do. So it's much better to redesign it in 2 seconds on the CAD program and then have a permanent copy that you can reproduce.
For the under educated on this, we can vary the durometer and flexibility of the TPU as it's going down here. And we're getting to hear some problem spots that can occur with vibrations. You'll see how we have some clips here to kind of balance the machine out. So there is some sensitivity to these machines, and give us an idea of some of the common engineering things that have to happen.
You have right. So the big things that'll happen, you'll get clogs, or you'll get where the feeder jams or something along that line. So if you're melting plastic, every time you melt the plastic and cool it down and remelt it, the plastic can crystallize, so you can form crystals, which then don't behave in the same lamellar flow as it would be as regular plastic that hasn't been crystallized. So these things can lead to little artifacts within the nozzle, which can cause clogs. So one of the biggest problems you're going to have is clogging of the nozzle, where you have to go through and clean like you would an old printer cleaning jams, but this one, instead of jam paper, you have jam plastic in the little hole. The other things being there's a temperature regulator and a heater inside that head, and either one of those can go bad. So it might say that it's only at 220 degrees Celsius, when really it's shooting at 500 degrees Celsius, at which point you now have a fire hazard sitting there. So, it's important to have a good printer and also to be aware.
Because generally with the bigger support central orthotic 3D print lab, in my case, when we've had issues, they've shipped us a new nozzle head. Well, and we shipped the old one out, and they deal with it. But we have had kind of the Apollo 13 situation where they've walked us through some easy fixes that involve a couple of the smaller screwdrivers to just take a look at the connection settings. Sometimes the connections get a little heated up, and just a little bit of minimal heat and cooling and vibration can then cause that connection to slightly unpair, and then it just requires a recoupling.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's a lot of little connectors. Everyone has to be seated properly. Otherwise, it's like driving an old car. I had an MG that always had little electrical connectors go bad, and you just would stall for no reason. A printer is much like that, especially if you're looking at a lot of the printers that are out there now. They're getting better and more reliable. However, they are mostly produced in factories where the quality control might not be the best. So
want to show people a finished product before we wrap it, Brian.
And
give people how to contact you if they want to get involved with your 3D print lab, because you're one of the guys at the forefront. So you can put little nice racing stripes and so forth. This is one that we did after the print was done. Then that top cover was applied, and so as long as you don't mind a little arts and crafts, you don't have to get too technical with other than having the ability to modulate that image before the print actually happens.
Right. Yeah, and like
How
what
do
I like
people
to
get in
work
touch
with
with you? Yeah.
is top covers that have a pre-done self-adherence, so you're not playing with barge or things in the office. If you just have one that's pre-adhered, you just pull off the sticky backing, put it on, and then scissor trim it around. And if you do have a sandy grinder, you can give it a professional look. The other thing that people
just full disclosure, when you got me onto that German glue, which people can contact you to get the name of, that'll be the incentive to reach out. I do that outside, so I'm not breathing those fumes, and that's the more adherent way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the professional glue that they use for doing shoes and everything like that. There's a lot of glues that are out there. You can even use like a 3M has a nice can spray that's pretty permanent that you can spray the orthotic down. And again, it doesn't have horrific smells, but any glue is going to have bad smells with the exception of really the ones that are pre-glued that you peel and stick.
How do people reach out to your lab and if they want to get started?
It's just theprintedfoot.com. It's all one word. So theprintedfoot.com. And
then any closing words, Bryan, on
I mean, we'll go through real quick with basically the same insole. You can make it for speed printing like this one where I didn't do a solid bottom. It's not a solid top, so you have to, you put your top cover on there. And this one, time-wise, was 50 minutes. This is a size 13. Now, if you take a smaller foot, like, and do it in something like this size where you're doing a 3/4, you might be able to knock this one down in like 40 minutes. And if you have, depending upon the arch height and how thick you make it, then this one is the same size foot as the last one, except for it has a finished bottom, finished top. And so this one was like probably an hour and a half on my good printer. On the home printers, that would be like a 3-hour print. So, the variation in time depends upon how close the layers, how nice you want the end product to look. Function-wise, there are some variances that change based on your infill pattern and things to make it harder or softer, so there's some compression into it.
Thank you so much for doing this and for participating in the biomechanics summit that we're having later in January. And if anybody wants to join that and hear not only about 3D printing, but some other state-of-the-art things, we're going to have Richard Blake, and we're going to have Simon Bartold and you and several others. Just email me at arlingtonfootandankle@gmail.com. Thanks again, Bryan. Until next time, this is Dr. Ben Pearl with FitFoot U.
All right. Have a good one.